First of all, I would like to welcome all of us to this webinar rather. The title of our webinar today is Mainstreaming Integrity, Reinforcing Trust. So hello everyone, selamat datang, selamat datang to all our participants today. So this seminar is organized, or rather this session is organized by the Leadership Institute of Sarawak Civil Service in partnership with the State Human Resource Unit and State Integrity and Ombudsman Unit. So my name is Madeline Berma. In case some of you may be wondering, I am Madeline Anak Berma, okay? Because some people may be thinking, is she from Myanmar or anything? So I am Madeline Berma, and I'll be hosting and moderating today's webinar. So allow me to introduce the speakers. So one of the speakers, none other than Yang Berbahagia Dato Amar Jaul Samion, our Sarawak State Secretary. And we are joined by two very, very distinguished or rather public intellectuals, or they have been involved directly in the integrity or rather in the research related to integrity in Malaysia. Okay, we will be joined by Yang Berbahagia Dato Dr. Anis Yusal Yusof. Well, Dr. Anis, I worked with him previously. He is currently the principal research fellow at the Institute of Ethnic Studies at University Kebangsaan Malaysia. And formerly, he was the Deputy Director General of the National Center for Governance, Integrity and Anti-Corruption, GIACC, at Prime Minister's Department. So Dr. Anis is definitely well-versed when it comes to national, when you talk about governance, integrity, and anti-corruption. So often I will sit down and listen to him giving his talks and totally enjoy the work that he's doing and some of the sharing that he had made in the past. Okay? And last but not least, we will be joined by Yang Berbahagia, Prof. Emeritus, Dato Dr. Abdul Rahman Mbong, Prof. Rahman, as we call him. Students and colleagues like me, we used to call him Pak Rahman. Okay, so Pak Rahman, or rather Prof. Dato Dr. Abdul Rahman Mbong, is emeritus professor at the Institute of Malaysian and International Studies, ICMAS UKM. Okay, so without further ado, so I think we will begin our part one of our webinar today with the first presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, Dr. Madeline Berma, Professor Hormat at the University of Malaysia Sarawak, our moderator for this morning session. First of all, I'm really honored to be invited by the organizers to be one of the panelists at this forum, together with the other distinguished panelists, Dr. Anis Yusal Yusof. Thank you very much, Dato. Emeritus Professor Dr. Abdul Rahman Mbong. Thank you, Dr. Professor. A very good morning to all heads of departments, study bodies, local authorities, and GLCs, and all those who are watching us via Zoom webinar or any other apps available for this program. I'm indeed grateful to be given this opportunity to share my thoughts and views on the topic, maintaining integrity, reinforcing trust. Thanks to our organizer, Leadership Institute, and also our Unit Integrity Ombudsman Chief Minister's Department. Ladies and gentlemen, as you're aware, the State Civil Service 1020 is holding on to 6 shared values. One of these values is integrity. This emphasis on integrity reflects our seriousness in inculcating the culture of integrity in the civil service organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can see that integrity is one of our core foundations, one of the 6 shared values: integrity, professionalism, sense of agency, sense of ownership, teamwork, kind, and caring. In a series of speeches, Why Victor Menteri has made a very clear statement about the aspiration of state government towards achieving high-income economy and developed status with high integrity in the year 2030. Now, this demands the state civil service to be very efficient in order to strengthen the state competitiveness and resilience. And in this respect, the public service, including that of the federal service, must be highly competent and efficient and effective. And more importantly, to uphold the need to uphold the need to uphold high degree of integrity in carrying out our duties and responsibilities. In our pursuit to achieve and materialize these aspirations, we must develop and enhance the human dimension of the SES. SES means State Civil Service. First and foremost would be the question of values and ethics, which I think form the very basis to transparency and accountability. Therefore, it is vital for each and every one of us to strictly adhere to the code of conduct of officers, provided for in the General Order, Chapters 4 of the State Public Service General Order 1996. Ladies and gentlemen, our integrity journey started in the early days when Sarawak gained independence with the formation of Malaysia. Now, let me begin by giving a quote by our first Chief Minister, the late Tan Sri Dato Amar Stephen Kaloningkan, in his speech when he officiated the supervision course for civil servants on the 5th of November 1965. I quote, "I'd like to say a few words about integrity. My fellow ministers and I are very proud of the high standards of integrity of our civil service. And I like to stress that it is very important that we should continue to uphold this standard," unquote. Clearly, this demonstrated that our administration has always been serious on issues relating to integrity in the state and the civil service, as evidenced by the actions taken by our past and present leaders. The late Tok Nan on the 15th January 2015 led his cabinet in taking integrity pledge, the first cabinet in Malaysia to do so. Our current Chief Minister, Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Tinggi Dr. Abang Haji Abdul Rahman Johari bin Tun Abang Haji Openg, about 2 weeks upon his appointment, also led his cabinet to sign and take the oath of integrity pledge. Now, as further testament of to our Chief Minister's strong commitment in this direction, he appointed a minister in the Chief Minister's Department in charge of integrity and ombudsman on 7th May 2017. Now, with this appointment, Sarawak became the first state in Malaysia to have established such ministerial portfolio overseeing matters relating to integrity and ombudsman. And subsequently, on the 1st January 2018, our very own Integrity and Ombudsman Unit, in short we call it Union, was set up to further strengthen the government's drive for the state to achieve high income and developed status by the year 2030. The state government, the journey continues, and our journey continues, and to ensure greater openness, accountability, and transparency in the administration, the state, after discussion with the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, MACC, agreed with the attachment of a senior MACC officer in the state in February 2019, who is now currently attached with Union. Now, the state government has also approved 118 posts for every state agency in the state civil service to set up their own integrity unit for the inculcation and implementation and monitoring of integrity initiatives in the respective departments. The MACA, the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Academy, started Certified Integrity Officers, CIO program in 2012. And by the year 2018, we, the State Civil Service in Sarawak, have 10 CEIOs. In 2019, with the assistance of MACA, we started our own program to produce our own CIOs. To date, the state has now 90 CIOs attached to their respective departments. Now, the CIOs and the agency's integrity unit will work together with the audit dalam Jabatan Ketua Menteri in the monitoring of action taken on the audit issues. The state has embarked on various programs and initiatives on integrity, spearheaded by the Integrity and Ombudsman Unit, encompassing all strata of society. What do all this mean? Now, it means one thing. It shows the seriousness of the state government and the civil service that integrity will be part of our culture and that every civil servant needs to be aware of this. Now, I like to touch on a very important subject, on the subject of procurement, which is one of the things, emphasis that we want to put in our civil service plan. Audit reports do provide credible feedback to the government and other stakeholders as to how well the procurement process has been implemented, not only in terms of adherence and compliance with government policies, regulation, and procedure, but also the actual outcome or impact on the ground. For example, why are public programs or projects often delayed or cost more than planned and do not work as intended sometimes? The next question is, have these programs or projects been meticulously planned before they're implemented? Has the contract been carefully prepared so that government interests are well protected? Has there been effective supervision that the job is carried out based on approved specification? These are some of the issues normally raised by audits to determine that programs or projects are undertaken based on spec, within time, and also within budget. What is important here also is what action would be taken against the culprits who have been identified or exposed in the audit report on cases relating to extravagance, wastefulness, and fraud. Now, let me touch on some elements of an effective procurement system. Several key elements of an effective procurement system are as follows. One, a procurement regulatory framework should address all government contracts and should be consistent as possible. Two, transparency. Transparency ensures trust and confidence in the procurement system. Now, transparency includes effective advertising, clear public bid opening procedures, objective bid evaluation criteria, independent evaluation methods, consistent with the stipulation of the bidding documents, awarding of contracts to qualified vendors, publication of award results, and disclosure of signed contracts and prices. Effective number three, effective and fair procedural rules are important in open competitive bidding. Procurement procedures utilizing methods other than open competitive bidding must be restricted within appropriate limit. A government official engaged in purchasing should be independent from vendors, independent from bidders, independent from prospective bidders, interested parties, politicians, and political appointees. He or she, in fact, must act only in the public interest as defined by the legislature. Since the government official is the fiduciary or trustee for public money, he or she must spend public money with care. The procurement rules and regulations must be fully followed and complied with. There must also be good procurement practice. Example, avoidance of monopoly of suppliers, review of suppliers of services who have been appointed for many years, among others. Officers need to avoid some of these pitfalls. Among others, Among others, these are contracts not signed to safeguard the interest of government, delay in signing the contract, procurement not managed according to established regulations, works done or services rendered not in accordance with original scope, low quality works or services rendered, unsatisfactory works maintenance, payment made for work services not carried out, not rendered, slow work progress, abandoned projects, cost overrun due to delays in project completion, variation orders carried out by contractors before approval from the work variation committee or the authority concerned is obtained, variation orders approved after the contract lapsed, certificate of practical completion issued even though projects are not completed, or even after completion, but services not properly carried out by the contractor in lack of or no coordination among parties involved in procurement. So to seek excellence in procurement, the possible underlying causes for problems on procurement or contract planning and the execution must be addressed. And these areas are things like unreasonable prices of goods, items supplied below standard of spec, improper payment, procurement through middlemen, tender and services dipecah-pecahkan jadi kecil-kecil, management of public assets, failure to conduct due diligence, and sometimes involvement of unseen hands. Procurement practices should address issues of accountability, integrity, transparency, ethics, value for money, and a professional workforce. Several best practices for government procurement processes are outlined as follows. Number one, enhance the knowledge and the skills in handling procurement by conducting periodical trainings to the procurement personnel at the ministry, at the department, and at the agency level. Periodical internal procurement inspection at least once in 6 months, and the job rotation in the various aspects of procurement. Number two, enhance the work system and capability of personnel as follows. Restructure the tasks with the actual work burden in line with the cabinet memorandum on proposal to enhance the governance system and procedure relating to government procurement at every ministry. Restructure, involve other people where appropriate in the procurement process to reduce dependence on certain officer. For good governance, compliance with government regulations and procedure is a must for every civil servant handling public money. In this regard, we have to ask ourselves, why is that government projects sometimes delayed in their completion? Why the cost escalations were incurred? And if it involved buildings, why were there numerous quality problems? If it involved developing ICT system, the deliverables are often not reliable, resulting in double work. Why should this be the norm for the private sector? Doing business with the government is indeed good business because the price is lucrative and you get your payment pretty fast. Why do some people involved in managing government programs and projects seems to be lackadaisical in discharging their responsibilities? So, to the public servants are careless in their work, and this has possibly caused losses to the government and wasting taxpayers' money. But the impression is that nothing will happen to those who are directly responsible for the losses. Jalan Kuasa Anti Rasuah Negeri, JAR Sarawak, has decided that procurement as a mandatory risk area that needs to be addressed through OACP. Now, ladies and gentlemen, every department should have good procurement policy, which emphasize on good governance. On accountability and integrity issues of JLCs, it is about practicing good governance Business entities are expected to make profits, although we know in business, making losses are unavoidable, especially in the early years of its operation. However, if the companies continue to incur losses despite assistance from the government, then there ought to be a total review of its business structure and strategies. The government is serious in addressing the issue of accountability and integrity in the public service. The State Financial Secretary Office, SFS, has issued Garis Panduan Pelaksanaan Integrity Pact dalam perolehan kerajaan negeri in 2020 as part of our initiative to ensure transparency and accountability in our all procurement process. The tone at the top is very clear in terms of imbuing the culture of accountability in organization. Staff ought to remember that in their day-to-day work, they will be audited, and someday they might be investigated and penalized or punished for their mismanagement of public money. The government is encouraging whistleblowing by providing adequate attention to whistleblowers. So let us collectively work for the betterment of society by enhancing our accountability and integrity. Now, to the heads of departments and controlling officer, you play a very major role in the administration, including finance and expenditure. If head of departments fail to comply, misuse or abuse your power, and take things for granted, the state will suffer because of the lack of morale and integrity. As civil servants, we must give undivided loyalty and devotion to the state and the government. Now, as head of department or as the controlling officer, you should, one, be wholly responsible on the audit issues and action to be taken from there on. Not just acting on how to answer the audit queries. We are sometimes busy with how to answer the queries, but we must also act to address these queries and take preventive measures, punitive measures to avoid repeat of such mistakes in the future. The two, undertake the agreed actions upon, must provide status update to audit dalam Jabatan Ketua Menteri from time to time. Another thing I want to stress is the matter related to human resource. For example, one of our shared values is kind and caring, but it does not mean that the head of department should cover up the wrongdoings of officers. We need to stop all this. It's time for us to take relevant action to such behavior. I am not asking for punishment before judgment, but to take action if there are issues and clearly he or she has committed mistakes or offenses as spelled out in Chapter 4 of the State General Order 1996. Now, as head of department, as supervisor, as senior officers in the organization, you must be stern and firm in taking action against errant or problematic staff. Do away from the wrong way of kasihan attitude. Need to take definitive disciplinary action on officers or staff who have committed wrongdoings or are in contravention of the rules and regulations of the civil service, and you should set exemplary conduct to reflect your leadership. And of course, monitor all of your staff who are living beyond official emolument and other legitimate private means. Ladies and gentlemen, our top leaders have given us the full trust and confidence to perform our duties and responsibilities accordingly. The Chief Minister himself has urged all civil servants to be transparent and focused on service delivery to the Rakyat, and may I quote his statement during the Dun sitting in May 2019. We are fully committed to have a clean and transparent state government. We are focused in our efforts to achieve high integrity and corruption-free government. Now, the Majelis Amanat Perdana Integrity or MAPI is the premier event for our Chief Minister to chart the direction and commitment and support of the state government relating to integrity programs and initiatives. I like to quote his statement during MAPI 2019. Quote, saya akan pastikan kerajaan negeri meletakkan integriti dan anti rasuah sebagai salah satu keutamaan dalam gerak kerja tahunan. The State Civil Service has put in place its own shared values, which I just mentioned earlier on. These are values which all civil servants must uphold when discharging their duties and responsibilities. We continue with our journey to strengthen integrity in our administration by adopting management tools introduced by the federal government in 2018. We proceeded with the corruption risk management (CRM) plan for the state agencies. Now, to date, 56 state agencies have completed their CRM plan, and we are now in the implementation stage. In 2019, federal government introduced the National Anti-Corruption Plan (NACP), whereby through this plan, every government agency needs to come up with their own plan, which is known as the Organizational Anti-Corruption Plan (OACP), which is a fundamental anti-corruption document at the organizational level to curb weaknesses and issues regarding governance, integrity, and anti-corruption within the organization. The state agencies, including statutory bodies, local authorities, and government-linked companies, have developed their OACP, facilitated by our very own facilitators, selected from amongst the CIOs trained by the Institute Integrity Malaysia. And I am proud to announce that the Chief Minister's Department of Sarawak, comprising all 11 units under the department, became the first to complete the OACP. I'm informed that 63 agencies have completed the OACP, while 23 more agencies are in progress. And I must congratulate all of you for taking seriously the initiative 2.1.5 of National Anti-Corruption Plan, i.e. preparing the OACP to enhance integrity, strengthen governance, reduce corruption at the agency level. Now, it's not just about preparing the OACP, it's about the importance of monitoring the implementation. Do we implement what we plan? If we don't, then OACP becomes just a document. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to inform that the Pejabat Setiausaha Kerajaan Negeri Sarawak, SS Office Sarawak, has been awarded with the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Champion 2019 for its dedication in inculturation of integrity throughout the state. To further enhance the culture of integrity to the society at large, we collaborated with UNIMAS and MACC in 2019 with a live theater showcase entitled Sarawak Pertiwiku, performed in Kuching and at the prestigious Istana Budaya Kuala Lumpur. We have taken numerous outreach integrity programs to disseminate the integrity values to all Sarawakians, including in the rural areas. These programs would continue in collaboration with various government agencies and NGOs, and we want to make sure that we reach out to as many people as possible the message on integrity. As today, Unit Integrity in various state departments has executed 121 integrity programs from the state. Now, the report from MACC on Tangkapan Penjawat Awam Negeri Sarawak bagi tahun 2017 sehingga 2021 shows an increase in number. This is because we are taking integrity issues seriously. Jabatan Audit Negara has released the Accountability Index 2018 for state agencies. It shows a very good performance, whereby 24 out of 32 agencies awarded with 5-star rating. What's our future plan for the state? The Jaduankuasa Khas Cabinet mengenai anti rasuah under the chairmanship of the Berma Prime Minister has decided to make it mandatory for every agency to adopt and certify under MSISO 37001 2016 Anti-Bribery Management System, ABMS. The state will also follow suit, and we will identify agencies for certification as pilot projects to make us more familiar with this certification scheme. To get this off the ground, I would like to see that the Chief Minister's Department be the first to undertake this certification. Currently, we do not have any specific measurement on the corruption index for the state. In fact, we still rely on the Malaysian index as provided for in the Corruption Perception Index, CPI, published by Transparency International. In this regard, we hope to work on and collaborate with appropriate academic institutions or any parties or expertise to come with mechanism which may assist us in developing a system to gauge the state's corruption index. With such mechanism, we would further hope to further enhance our future programs and initiatives pertaining to integrity and eradication of corruption. I've been made to understand by MACC that Sarawak Civil Service ranks at number 4 position in public service corruption ranking in Malaysia, as conducted by MCC. So congratulations to the Sarawak State Civil Service. That means it is a challenge to all of us to enable our civil service in achieving the top position for being free of corruption or the best among the states in Malaysia. I therefore call upon each and everyone in the state civil service to steadfastly continue with our efforts in eliminating corruption and to uphold integrity at all levels of the public administration. Kita perlu hapuskan ruang dan peluang untuk salah laku, terutama sekali di kalangan pejabat awam di negeri Sarawak sebagai contoh teladan kepada sektor yang lain. Ladies and gentlemen, the message from this webinar is very clear and simple. We must go back to basics. We want our officers to be taught the best and not forgetting the basic values such as honesty, sincerity, and integrity. We want our public services to give the best to the rakyat in any circumstances, be it in the center of power corridor or the utmost remote area in Sarawak. We are all marching together harmoniously to this beloved state to be the best. As a civil servant, we must show good example to the community. We belong to the community and we must serve the community or rakyat with sincerity and full commitment, which will lead to excellent service delivery. I'd like to take this opportunity to leave a message to all civil servants in Sarawak. Do your job with sincerity and honesty, and that's integrity. Do not procrastinate in your job. Do it now, not to delay it when it can be done immediately. Walk the extra mile. Do more than required or work beyond expectation. But of course, in doing so, you must adhere to approved procedures and process. I call that excellence. Walk the talk. Take action, not just talk, not NATO. Promises made must be met or acted upon. We must think of the person we serve with empathy. Develop and nurture trust to the SCS by the rakyat and stakeholders as well. Serve the public equally. Serve them fairly and never discriminate in any form or whatsoever. Do not pass the buck around. We must accept responsibility. Be knowledgeable and be aware of the situations around. Always serve with pride and the best of your ability. Let me quote Mr. Nelson Mandela. Quote, honesty, sincerity, simplicity, humility, pure generosity, absence of vanity, readiness to serve others, qualities which are within reach of every soul are the foundation of one's spiritual life. It is time to return to those old core values which inherited from the past generation, like honesty, sincerity, integrity, and so on. Time to go back to basics, to self-discipline and respect to the rules and regulation, to consideration for others, especially our clients, to accepting responsibility for yourself, your family, your community, and not shuffling off on other people in the state. As additional benefit, the digitalization agenda of the state is also expected to reduce corruption by promoting transparency opening government information to public scrutiny, and by automating government processes, restricting discretion of officials, and limiting citizens' interaction with gatekeepers to access key services. In respect of this, I'd like to see many more processes to be documented and automated in order to reduce human interference, human involvement, and discretionary in making decisions. Again, I'd like to urge all head of department as chairman of Jawatankuasa Tata Tertib Jabatan and Jawatankuasa Tata Tertib Kumpulan Pengurusan dan Profesional, as well to make use of audit findings as additional source of information of breach of any of the provisions of the State General Order 1996 to investigate further in accordance with Rule 16 or Rule 17 of the Public Service Commission's Rules 1996 and take disciplinary action if proven guilty. I strongly believe that our civil service is well positioned to achieve this vision of world-class civil service. We're able to move to be where we are now and to continuously move forward, primarily with a strong commitment and professionalism of the entire civil service. In addition to that, the Sarawak Civil Service is fortunate to have dynamic and progressive state government, which, with the far-sightedness and visionary leadership of our Chief Minister and his strong support to put integrity is one of the state's main agenda. I would like to promote, lastly, I would like to promote and to all members of the civil service to embrace three important core values, i.e., honesty, sincerity, and integrity. These three core values will enable us to deliver three most important tasks of the civil service, which is number one, service, number two, service, number three, service. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato Amar, for your very, very powerful speech. That was really something. I am so honored to be to moderate your session, and also to the other two speakers later. I am really, I mean, as I sit here listening to you delivering your speech, that was really a very powerful one. The words that you use, especially the last part, you know, honesty, sincerity, you know, integrity, and the word was service, service, and the last one also service. Thank you very much, Dato Amar. Yang Berma, Dato Amar. Thank you very much for your presentation. Now let's move on to our next speaker, and that is I'm inviting our second speaker, our second panelist, Dato Dr. Anis Yusof.
Terima kasih, Mac.
Yep, thank you.
Yang berhormat Dato Amar, State Secretary, yang saya hormati guru saya juga Pak Rahman, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor. This is a great privilege for me to return to Sarawak after many years, especially during this COVID period. I'm able to take a flight back and to be reminded of all the things that Sarawak state government have done in terms of reinforcing integrity. So what Dato Amar mentioned just now, you know, it's a good report card kind of things for me, because I've been involved in helping out Dato Talib Zulkifli in the beginning when he became the minister in charge of governance, ombudsman, and integrity. Sarawak is very special to me personally, and hence why I'm here again. I just want to caution us, you know, when the theme of this conference, when we talk about mainstreaming integrity, my worry is the moment it's mainstream, it get lost in the radar. I think sometimes things that mainstream, we must also have it on the side, that we have to be reminded all the time. You know, honestly, after listening to Yang Berhormat Dato Amar, I don't know what else that I can say. You know, he has covered it all, he has said it all. I don't think anything else that I said would be useful to this forum. But however, if I'm allowed, I want to give a different perspective about this whole topic. I think to reinforce this whole, the trust part, first, we need to understand why this integrity, that word integrity, why is it important? I think if we continue to talk about this subject but deep down inside, kalau dalam hati kita tidak faham kenapa integrity itu penting, we can talk till cows come home, Jadi I hope that in the next 20 minutes I'm able to put in perspective of why integrity is important. And I chose this picture to start with for a reason. As you can see, well, you all are familiar with this great building on the right, where all the state legislature goes to write good laws for the state. But there is also the other building on the left, which represent the faith. Jadi kalau kita focus on trust, I think it's important that religion plays an important part in this whole exercise. I mean, of course, there's the mosque, I'm sure the church and the temple and other faith-based religion plays an important part as well. So these are the two important symbols that we need to take on. Let me start by just sharing this very powerful quote. I know that I saw earlier just now, Paraman also has using this same quote. This Warren Buffett said that look for three things in a person: intelligence, energy, and integrity. If they don't have the last one, don't even bother with the first two. The point here is that who is this Warren Buffett to say this? This guy, he made his money at a very young age. When he was 16, he already have 55,000, became billionaires. This guy probably now worth more than 74 billion. But the point that I want to tell all of us today is that he still lives in a 5-bedroom house in Nebraska that he bought in 1956 for just $31,000. Imagine, I think in our culture today, the moment you have money, you want to build a mansion or palace, but this is the kind of person and why integrity is important to him. So let us move on, because I think the theme that I want in the next now 16 minutes is about making sure that we realize why integrity is important. So for that, I have three stories to tell. The first story is her story. Second story, his story. It's always her story first before his story. And finally, it's our story. I have been going to Sarawak to speak, and I'm sure among the people in the audience, they have listened to this presentation, but it's all right. It's good to have a refresher, good to be reminded sometime, because I feel that these stories are the one that's important that we need to be reminded all the time. So what is this her story about? It's about this lady by the name of Miss Malaysia. And I want to use three indices. One is the Human Development Index, the other one is the Global Peace Index, and the third is the Corruption Perception Index, for us to relook at ourselves. How do people perceive us? Because these indexes are all prepared by international agencies. And this is how they compare us with all the other countries in the world. In terms of the UNDP Human Development Index, we are number 62 out of 189 countries, with life expectancy at 76.2, expected years of schooling 13.7, and our gross national income per capita is about $27,000. In terms of Global Peace Index, this was done by the Institute of Economic and Peace out of Sydney. They are much, in terms of peace, we are much better. We are number 20 in the world, among the countries that have been recorded. But our worrying trend is in terms of the Corruption Perception Index. We are number 57 of 180, and with a score of 51. In 2019, when I was still working at GICC, we managed to score 53. The rank was 51, but last year somehow we slipped down. But let us, with understanding of how people perceive us, let us look at two scenarios. 10 years to come, it's important for us to look at these two scenarios. The first scenario is that corruption becomes a way of life. If corruption becomes a way of life, what would happen to us? Obviously, politicians will be corrupted. They use money politics to buy votes. Civil servants will profit for their own benefit. Businessmen will bribe as a way to secure projects. And religious leaders akan menghalalkan yang haram. What happened to law enforcement officers? They will turn the not just a blind eye, maybe sometimes they close both eyes. And community will be oppressed and distressed. Youth, because there are no good role models, so they will look at people like Jolo, and others. And anti-corruption agencies and integrity unit will be shut down. Now, let us look at some of the outcomes of this scenario. Obviously, with this scenario, the country in ruins, government paralyzed, business lethargic. I mean, who would come and invest in a country like this? And people will be marginalized. Question, do you think that there is already a country out there that have achieved this? Let me just share with you a few examples of the kind of country, the failed state. One is Somalia. When I was working for UNDP, even we cannot have the data for us to compare Somalia with the other countries. The life expectancy data is something that I got from WHO because they are not listed on the Human Development Index. So you cannot see the problem there from human development perspective. In terms of Global Peace Index, they are number 158 out of 163, bottom 5. And in terms of Corruption Perception Index, actually, although it's put there at 179, they shared with another country, the last two countries, with a score of 12 out of 100. We scored 51. So we have to compare and see us in comparison with the worst country in the world. Second on the list is actually Zimbabwe. And I chose Zimbabwe because Zimbabwe is one of those countries that got its independent much later compared to the rest of the countries that they got in the 80s. But in the short time they got their independence, look at what happened to Zimbabwe. We know Mugabe for forever. He just passed away recently. And the Corruption Perception Index in Zimbabwe is at a score of 24. They are 157 out of 180 countries. In terms of peace, also, they're not that good. They're 131 of 163 countries. And Human Development Index, you look at the gross national income per capita in Zimbabwe, while we had ours at 27,000, theirs is only $2,600. This country used to have this as their banknote. They have $100 trillion, as a note. You know why they need to have such a big donation like this? Because otherwise they have to carry so much cash. At one time, they are known as starving billionaires. They could be billionaires, but they are starving. They probably carry that much cash to have just one roti canai, or to have a Sarawak laksa, a plate of Sarawak laksa. So this is the situation. And of course, now they're using other currencies as a mean for them to do business transaction. Closer to home is Myanmar. Look at statistics in Myanmar. Human Development Index, their GNI per capita is only 4,009. Life expectancy is 67 compared to us. We are much better. In terms of peace, security as well, they are 127. We are number 20 in the world. But corruption, they are slightly better than Zimbabwe. Their score is 28. So if we compare us, and I know this country rather well, because Sasuchi attended one of my lectures. If we compare these three nations, of course we are much better. But why do we compare ourselves with the worst, or the worst neighbor that we have? Certainly we need to look at the other scenarios. But this is important for us to see. If we fail to uphold, to do all the things that Yang Berhormat Dato' Amar mentioned just now, if the state civil servant fail to deliver those good values, we are going in this direction. Now, scenario B, 10 years to come, if integrity is a way of life, but this is the way that we want to go. See what will happen. Politicians serve the people over themselves. Civil servant provide first-class public service delivery. After all, you're a civil servant, you serve the public. Businessmen win contracts on merit and are honest and trustworthy, and religious leaders guide followers to the right path. What happened to the enforcement agencies? They can enforce the law without fear or favor. The community enjoy quality of life. What happened to the youth? Of course, the youth are inspired and become responsible future leaders. And what happened to the integrity unit and anti-corruption agencies? Well, no longer needed. If they have able to get the whole society to become so good like this, we don't need it anymore. Countries like New Zealand don't even have anti-corruption agencies. Anyway, let us look at the outcome of this scenario. Country prosperous, advanced, secure, government efficient, effective, business thriving, and of course, ultimately, the people of that country will have high quality of life. Now, can you guess? Is there a country out there that have achieved this scenario? Of course, there are. Let's look at Denmark. Let's look at Human Development Index of Denmark. They are ranked 10 of 189 countries. Look at the life expectancy in Denmark, 80.9, better than us. Expected years of schooling, 18.9. We were only 13. And look at their gross national income per capita, $58,000. We were only 27,000. Of course, then people will say, well, Denmark is a small country with small population, but we can take maybe Sarawak and compare Sarawak with Denmark. And I think that should be the benchmark for Sarawak civil servants to make, that you want to be the Denmark of Malaysia. Look at the country. Look how pretty. Don't you want to see the Rejang River to look like this? This is, some ways for us to imagine how those countries with a good perspective in terms of the index, in terms of managing corruption, where they are. Now let's look at New Zealand. In terms of statistics, look at life expectancy in New Zealand, 82.3. Baik, kalau kita nak panjang umur, kita semua pun pindah duduk New Zealand juga. Look at their GNI per capita. This is real. We can be like this. Look at the country, and I always joke whenever I show this slide. When a country is prosper and progress so good, even the kambing also looks so pretty. Look at the country. So sometimes we need the imagination. So the pictures help us to visualize and see that where we are and where we want to go and why. We are not that far behind. But the choice is between going the direction of New Zealand and Denmark, or the Somalia and Zimbabwe. Obviously, sometimes whenever I make this comparison, there's some people who say, "Oh, why compare us with, negara bukan Islam?" But mind you, New Zealand in the Sharia compliant index, they are on the top list. Malu negara Islam. Nothing to do with Islam. It's how the people in the country is behaving. I think this is where we should be looking at the attitude, the culture change. So now, by looking at just that perspective, giving us a worldview, I want to move us to another part, the history of the things that I've been writing in the past. I wrote a lot of things. This one, I don't know why the editor said something wrong with our way of life. I titled it, Everything is Wrong with Our Way of Life, because it is. We seem to make virtue out of pursuit of material self-interest. We become so materialistic as a society. So how do we change that? Again, this is the enculturation process that needs to be done. While all the things that we have, but we need to understand the root of corruption. So that survey that we gave just now, earlier on, was good. That some people say greed, some people say because of power, position. So how do we manage? How do we balance those things? The need to live with integrity, that's clearly. I wrote books about combating corruption, memerangi rasuah, the national integrity system, many books. The most recent is this recentering governance, which I did with Tashi Abu Qasim. But until I read this book by Kautilya, in this book, 2,400 years ago, Kautilya already mentioned there is corruption happening. So corruption is nothing new. If you take the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index, this is the map. Those red-colored are those who scored below 40 and 50, and only the highest one, the 90, 100s, are the one in yellow. And you look at almost all 3/4 of the world are in red. So we are slightly lighter than red, but kind of orange, but still we need to be like New Zealand, and this is real. So we are fighting a real battle. Instilling integrity is important as a way to fight corruption. If you look at the Corruption Perception Index, I want to compare us with two countries, with South Korea and with Indonesia. You look at one point, Malaysia in 2006, Malaysia and South Korea about the same position, but South Korea just went up above us and maintained at 56, 55, and they remain above us. And in 2018 they went up, in 2019 59, and 2020 they went up to 61. While whereas ours was like a roller coaster, we were going down 47, 47. Fortunately, the effort that we did in 2018, 2019 went up to 53, but 2020 we went down to 51. But look at Indonesia. For the last 15 years, they've been going up and up and up and up. 37, 38, 40, and I told friends, if we're not careful in the past, we might just, they might overtake us. But something happened in the last few years when the KPK laws was repealed. A few things was taken from KPK. They became a bit ineffective, and hence their score went down to 37. But this is important for us to look at where we are going and in comparison with our neighbors and where we are. I have a few more minutes left. I want to just rush us because the important part is coming, this cause of corruption. Most of the time when we talk about corruption, people don't understand what is the cause. And I want to explain briefly. Using actual report, this is Utusan Online reported in April 3rd, 2011. This is the report when Dato, now Dato Sri Mustafa Ali, he was the Deputy Chief Commissioner of MACC at that time when they arrested some people at the Customs Department. He estimated the country loses 108 billion income every year. That's a lot of money. How do we lose 108 billion from Customs Department? To give an example, an imported car worth 2 million once they came in because of the import duty and the local taxes. That 2 million would cost 4.9 million. That means the moment you reach at the port, the person already paid the 2 million, but the remaining 2.9 million has to be paid. They could bribe people, and there are cases. When both Pak Rahman and I, we were on the advisory panel, on the prevention panel of MACC, we were told how the X-ray machine at the port could be tampered, where whatever goes through those big containers, instead of the Ferrari, it reads Alat Perabot Indonesia. Hence, they pay only 300 ringgit worth of taxes. So this thing happened. This is just one example, just to illustrate so that we understand. Imagine how many cars are coming in, how many other things that needs to be taxed, and yet they came through and so this estimate of 108 billion income every year from one department, it's a lot of money. 1 billion is 1,000 million. What can we do with 108 billion? To build a hospital in Rompin, a state-of-the-art hospital, we spend 110 billion. 110 million, we get a state-of-the-art hospital. Now you help me to count how many hospitals we could not build because of corruption. Because that year we lost 108 billion because somebody doesn't have integrity. The country lost the opportunity to build how many hospitals? That's just hospital. What about schools with good facilities? What about universities, roads, bridges, homes and shelters? Now, this is an important question to ask ourselves. Now, at this point, do you think that corruption or integrity is not important? Corruption is certainly bad for the nation, but integrity is important for us to have in ourselves. I know that my time is up in just 20 minutes. I have the third part, but I think I will use the third part because the third part will be more related to I will just spend to, this is just a survey that I did. but it will talk about just if you can give me 1 minute, Mac, just so that when the
Last
discussion,
1 minute, yes. Okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
the population prone to corruption. When we did this anti-corruption plan, I was involved when we were doing the national anti-corruption plan to be launched in 2019. We took the actual data. So the actual data was about 30,000 records from MACC, and we dissect that records, and we found that from that 20,000 cases complaint, 63% of it came from public official, meaning to say 63% of the cases are done by public official. Of course, people will say, why blame only the public official? But this is real data. And of course, every time when we talk about 62% of these people, the giver also are equally responsible. And we know the giver, which sector the giver came from. But people who receive both the giver and taker are equally important. And of course, the other data from the same 20,000 records, we found that 42% of the area prone to corruption are in the area of procurement. So Yang Berhormat Dato Amar, very right in pointing out that we need to make sure that your procurement system are checked, are done properly. So with actual data, then you know, in fact, if you look at the OECD report, clearly stated the public procurement has been identified as the government activity most vulnerable to corruption. As a major interface between the public and the private sectors, public procurement provides multiple opportunities for both public and private actors to divert public funds for private gain. Paling mudah for them to siphon money is through procurement. So we need to enhance that, and that's why in the if you look at this framework that we designed for the National Anti-Corruption Plan, the focus was on public procurement. You can see the public procurement is one area, the public sector is the other. But we also put emphasis on political governance because that's the 1MDB and all the other problems. But to make sure that we also realize that we need to address, we need to have the proper court system, the proper judicial system for corruption cases. And we don't miss out these two other parts, law enforcement, because that's where the opportunities are. The law enforcement unit department, you know, in the case of custom, we saw was the problem. Why? Because they're exposed. They could see the opportunity and they take the opportunity for them to do the wrong thing. And corporate governance, we need to create clean business environment. So last 10 seconds, I think ultimately this is important. No matter what you do, I think what I drive home in the last 20 minutes is that we must first understand ourselves, you, yourself, each one of you. No point of talking about other people, no point of preaching to others, but tell yourself, you have to be a person of integrity, you have to carry yourself. This last slide that I always use in my presentation is to explain, you know, when baby is still in the mother's womb, God created the heart first. You know, you can hear the heartbeat. The brain is put much later. But the problem with our society, and this is universal everywhere in the world, the moment the baby is out, we are busy about trying to make our kids smart. We send to school, we send to tuition, we send ballet, we send to piano classes, by the time they get to universities, the kepala is so besar, they became besar kepala lah. But nobody touches the heart. So the heart gets smaller and smaller. So by the time they graduate, besar kepala satu, but they become heartless person, and that's why the things that we are facing today, the problem, the challenges, masalah integrity or corruption, are all done by people yang tak ada hati perut. You know, there is a Malay saying of that, tak ada hati perut, and so true. So we need to balance. We need to have, while they are bijak sana, they must be bijak di sini. The heart must also be touched, and I hope that this program. And I'm speaking from my heart, and I hope you reach the heart of, I don't know how many people now, there are 675 participants out there. If not all, if 100 of you can take what I'm saying in the spirit that you're going to make the change, you're going to be the change agent, and what Yang Berhormat Dato Amar mentioned earlier are things that you need to soldier on and push the agenda, and I wish Sarawak all the very best, that you lead Malaysia in terms of making to show that Sarawak is the example state, since you're the first to have the OACP, that you show what it means to put integrity in the right place and to reinforce trust. With that, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dato Anis. I enjoyed your presentation. That was really very powerful. And now, last but not least, I would like to welcome Prof. Emeritus, Prof. Dato Rahman. So, Prof. Rahman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dato Madeline, Mike, and Yang Berhormat Dato Amar, the State Secretary of Sarawak, Saudara Dato Anis, who has just made his presentation, members of the Secretariat, and ladies and gentlemen, participants of this webinar, Mainstreaming Integrity, Reinforcing Trust. I would like to express my appreciation and thanks to the Sarawak government and to the Leadership Institute for bringing me on board in this program. Being the third speaker is an advantage and at the same time also a disadvantage, because the issues that I intend to cover have been covered first by Yang Berhormat Dato Amar, whose speech was very compelling, very inspiring, very powerful, as the chief civil servants in the state of Sarawak, giving directions, giving advice, and providing visions and all that. And I think that is the kind of tone from the top that we need for this agenda of integrity. Dato Anis has spoken about her story, his story, and our story with very compelling examples and comparisons, and with scenarios about what happens if we don't institute integrity. Corruption will become a way of life, and we will be like the countries that we shouldn't be, and we miss to become countries like, say, New Zealand or Denmark or countries of that sort. And that means we should compare not with the worst, but with the best. Now, having said that as a caveat, what I would like to do now is to zoom in on the question of integrity and earning trust, but I paraphrase my discussion with the phrase "in line of duty." And this is, of course, not an original phrase. It was used to refer to the work of police officers, soldiers, and others whose job has elements of danger and they may have to sacrifice their life. But the point I want to emphasize here is that while different jobs may have specific demands, the essence is basically the same: integrity, honor, courage, and competence in the performance of the job, in the line of duty to provide service to the public. So I'm arguing that the phrase "in line of duty" can and should also be used for other types of job or other types of professions which have to be done with integrity, honor, courage, passion, and competence in the service for the public and the nation. Such kind of commitment, such kind of demands to ourselves to provide the best, indeed is in line of duty. Of course, the moderator, Dr. Mac, does now say that he knows where it's coming from. Of course, there was this TV series, BBC TV series in 2012, and the gist of the story is that an authorized firearms officer who refused to cover up the case of a member of the team for shooting was transferred to an anti-corruption unit. And in that anti-corruption unit, he exposed the kind of corruption that takes place there, the links between the top leadership of the unit with the underworld and all that, and that's how the story goes. Okay, now I have to move on from there quickly and to emphasize that the moral of the story is integrity, honor, courage, honesty, competence, pride in the job. We must be steadfast in upholding all these elements of integrity, and all these are in the line of duty, as I said earlier on. Now, integrity, Dato Anis spoke, and then Yang Berhormat spoke about the 6 core values of Sarawak. Integrity is the first one. And I just reinforce what you have said. As integrity is number of values, behavior, and practices, not just the values, but it translates into behavior and actions. It's the defining core of an individual's character, doing the right thing the right way in public or in private. But I would like to introduce this another term here. And Dato Anis just now gave the example, a graphic example about how the brain became bigger, but the heart became smaller. So I'm emphasizing here that integrity is actually the habits of the heart, not just the habits of the brain. It's the heart. Once it becomes the habits of the heart, integrity becomes habitual. It becomes a culture. It is upheld, practiced automatically or spontaneously at every moment in one's life. So the issue here is that we have got to really make integrity as the habit of the heart and not just as understanding by the brain. And the brain understands, analyzes, the heart feels, and it is a conscience in the heart. So, okay, I pose a question here: is what should we do for what should we look for in a person when hiring for a job or promotion, or citation as a model employee or for reward? Just now, Dato' Anis already mentioned about this tokoh corporate, Warren Buffett, and because of the power of this quotation, many people pick it, and I also pick it: integrity, intelligence, energy. If a person has intelligence, that means the brain. Okay, it's good. Energy, that means dynamic, can perform. Also good. But such good traits without the first one, integrity, which is the more fundamental, that person is dangerous. He or she will destroy you. That's the message that I say. Okay. So I want to give examples of what happens when you only have intelligence and energy, but no integrity. The integrity collapse. The most notorious example from America is, of course, the Enron Corporation, an American energy company based in Texas, formed in 1985. And the Enron scandal was exposed in October 2001, and it was the largest bankruptcy reorganization in American history, and also the biggest audit failure. It's not just that corporation, but the auditors also. Arthur Andersen also was implicated, was deeply involved. Okay. Enron scandal grew out of a culture of cheating, not a culture of integrity that Yang Muhammad mentioned in his speech. Culture of cheating. The scandal grew out of a steady accumulation of habits and values and actions that began years before and finally spiraled out of control. So cheating became the habits of the heart, not integrity, the habits of the heart. That's what happens. It's a culture of cheating. And Arthur Andersen was their auditor. Arthur Andersen is one of the top 5 audit firms in the world. But how did Arthur Andersen do the accounting? The primary motivation for Enron's accounting and financial transactions seemed to have been to keep reported income and reported cash flow inflated up, assets values inflated, and liabilities of the book. This is pure cheating. Now, lessons from Enron. How unethical culture of cheating was allowed to fester in Enron. Accumulation of bad habits and practices. Cheating became the habits of the heart. And how it was done? The chief financial officer conspired with the auditors, with Arthur Andersen, and some board members to cheat. Use the loopholes, the accounting loopholes and all that. And this is what our annual, the Auditor General's report also sometimes points to this accounting loopholes and all that. So they hide billions of debt, failed deals and projects. So things look very good on paper. But fraud, cheating, and all these corrupt practices and all that cannot be covered, for a long time. It became exposed. Why? Because there are people inside the organization who have integrity, and we have the function of the whistleblower is very important. And it was one of the vice presidents who blew the whistle. But to do that, we have to have integrity and courage. So here is the importance of whistleblower in any organization. And I'm very happy to hear in Dato' Ahmad's speech, Dato' Ahmad's speech, that whistleblowing is one of the things that comes from the tone from the top. Okay. Now, what about Malaysia? Just now I mentioned about Enron. Now let's look at Malaysia. What is the situation? What lessons can we draw? Now, Dato' Anis also mentioned some things about this, but I would like to compliment his presentation when he talked about the indexes, the Human Development Index, the Peace Index, and also the Corruption Perception Index. I'm not going to touch those index, but I'm going to give examples about what happened inside the country, which are being measured or being reflected in the index. Okay, there were two major surveys commissioned by the Prime Minister's office at the time, Perdana Menteri Tun Abdullah Ahmad Badawi. The first study, the survey, was the survey on the public perception of corruption in Malaysia in 2002, and there was another one in 2007. But I would like to refer to 2002 because that was the catalyst for later on that translated in what that recommended the what we call that the formulation of the National Integrity Plan. It's about attitudes and values. Some red flags here. Government sector willing to offer bribes, 17.9%. Willing to accept bribes, 12.4%. Involved in corruption, 6.5%. Prepared to lodge report on corrupt activities, 31.1%. Very low. They are not prepared to be whistleblowers. Only a small percentage, and the majority don't want to be. Just now we had a poll about whether you have accept gifts or things of that sort. Well, this is an indication of what is happening in 2002. Okay, willing to offer bribes by sector, private sector 39.1%, prepared to give bribe. Public also 32%. Government sector 17.9%. Now, about students, and this is very important. They were not working yet. As students, their attitudes, values are very important to examine. Experience of being asked to give bribes, well, 15.7%, maybe because they don't have the license when riding around on a motorbike or whatever. Willing to give bribes to get things done, 15%. Bagai wang pelincir. Willing to give bribes to avoid action, also wang pelincir, 27.7%. Regard gift giving not as bribery, very high, that's 7.6%. In the poll just now, we saw some participants who said that they were given some gifts. Then the last one is very important. Willing to accept bribe if in power. 30.5% is very high, almost 1/3. They were not yet in power, but their values and attitudes, their orientation can be seen from here. Now, the recommendation was, of course, to formulate the National Integrity Plan. Corruption is a manifestation for integrity, of the lack of integrity, must address the problem with a holistic plan involving all stakeholders, not firefighting, and make integrity, not corruption, as the way of life. That was the gist of the plan. Now, how did the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission respond to the study? How do they view it? This is a statement from the Deputy Chief Commissioner, Dato' Samshul. He said, UKM 17-year-old study, the one in 2002, on willingness to accept bribes proves prophetic. This is the scenario that we see after 17 years after that. Now, Dato' Anis talked about scenario building just now. When in 2002, when we discovered these findings about the willingness of students to accept bribes if they are in power, well, not many people really took it that seriously. Of course, some people took it very seriously. But if they had been taken very seriously then, things would have been better.
Nice to meet you.
Okay. Now, the data from the Deputy Chief Commissioner stated that 53.2% of the 5,024 offenders nabbed from 2014 to 2018 are aged 40 and below. This figure tallies with a survey carried out 17 years ago, that means in 2002, as the respondents are now between 38 and 40 years old. That means they were students 17 years ago, but now they are in offices, you know, in the various occupations. But the data here shows that people in that age category who were students 17, 20 years ago and all that. So that is very important. So another survey in 2007, findings on students are similar. 35.2% of the student respondents expressed willingness to accept bribes if they were in power, slightly higher than 2002. Okay, what about now? 2021. No recent survey has been done on the attitudes of and willingness to accept bribes, but there was a small study that Anil was involved in this study on about 400 of the students in various universities with the attitudes and understanding about certain activities were indicative to show whether they understand is it corruption or not. For example, making claims for accommodation when accommodation is provided. 37.3% of them say, okay, it's not corruption, not abuse of power. Gives in cash and kind in return for services rendered. 35.8% say, not corruption. Taking assets from office for personal use. For example, thumb drive, toner, paper, and so on. 21%, 48.1% say it's nothing wrong. Directly involved in appointing family members to fill up vacancy, office vacancy. Many say nothing wrong. 20.6% say nothing wrong. So these are the understanding of students about corrupt practices, and many of them say nothing wrong with these activities. They are not corruption activities. So in a way, it shows that the issue is serious among the young generation and something serious must be done. Okay, just I want to relate to what Dato Anis said just now about the data from the when he and the team was preparing for the National Anti-Corruption Plan. Now, this is data from the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission and it's used in the plan. And the high-risk areas are what? Procurement, enforcement, administration, licensing and permits and all that. Procurement, that was highlighted just now by Yang Berhormat Dato Amar in his speech, that procurement must be really well regulated, must be really transparent so that corruption cannot fester there. Okay, so take-home message is what? Sorry. Pay serious attention when the young students and you say they are willing to accept bribes if they are in power. Pay serious attention to their values, attitudes, and the understanding about corruption and lack of integrity. In government service, pay more attention to high-risk sectors, but don't neglect other sectors. Corruption, abuse of power, dereliction of duty, dishonesty, cheating, and so on are all a reflection of the lack of integrity. Hence, integrity building is absolutely crucial so that integrity becomes the habits of the heart. Now, I want to go on to the next stage, next section, integrity building and the practice of integrity. Now, what are the models that can be used in integrity building? Generally, there are three models. One is this Greek temple model, developed by Transparency International by Professor Jeremy Pope in 2000, about the pillars of integrity. And this is a good model. Nevertheless, they are quite universal, and for our purposes, maybe it's a bit difficult to relate directly because the model is based on the European experience and it's quite universal, but it is useful as a guide. There is the second model, 2005, developed by Professor Charles Sanford. It's called the bird's nest model. This is, in a way, trying to fill up the gaps where the Greek temple model was having problem, in the sense that you must network very well, don't work in silos. And at the same time, it's important to localize the fight against integrity, the fight against corruption and to promote integrity. The elements are used for the birds used in building the nest are all in the environment nearby. That means don't go too far. Use the local wisdom, local knowledge, and local materials in developing the model. That's the gist of it. Now, what about Malaysia? In Malaysia, based on the National Integrity Plan that was launched by the Prime Minister Tun Abdul Ahmad Badawi in 2004, we have developed what is called the turtle model. Why the turtle model, not the bird's nest or the Greek temple? The reason is simple. The turtle is a sea creature which is close to all of us. It is an icon of the Southeast Asian region, something we can relate to and feel passionate about. What does the turtle symbolize? The turtle symbolizes the value of hard work, of resilience, of perseverance, of productivity, of humility, and very importantly, it never loses its bearing. It will come back to the same beach to lay its eggs 1 year later or 6 months later, whatever. That is important. The compass, the compass for the turtle is very good. It's exact. Similarly, integrity also provides a moral compass, a bearing for the individual so that he or she does not lose the way. Now, what are the threats to integrity? It's greed. Just now we have the poll, 39% said it's personal greed. Now, integrity can be likened to the eggs of the turtle, the fruits of his hard, persistent, and patient labor, which promises life. But the eggs are often threatened by human greed, just like integrity in the human world. Hence, the turtle's eggs should be protected and nurtured so that life can continue. In the same way, integrity must be protected and nurtured because it is the soul of life and the inner mover for social progress. Development and progress must be value-based, i.e. based on integrity. And the question of greed that was referred to in the poll just now, I take a quote from Mahatma Gandhi, who says that the world has enough to satisfy everyone's needs, but it does not have enough to satisfy everyone's dream. Now, that is a very powerful quote. So, to go on, the turtle model is anchored in the rich history, culture, and civilization of Malaysia as part of the Nusantara in Southeast Asia, a region where monsoons meet, a region with a glorious maritime history, a confluence of major world civilizations, Nusantara, Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucianism, and so on. So, another aspect when we look at the turtle is that the alphabets in the name turtle, T-U-R-T-L-E, in the spelling of turtle, encapsulates some of the core values of integrity. T, trust, trustworthiness, truthfulness. U, unity. R, resilience, responsibility. T, transparency. L, longevity, lifelong learning, legacy. E, ethics, education, empowerment. So that is why that was the model. What the turtle was used as an icon to create the model because of one, it is an icon of the region, something that we can relate to. Second, it so happens that the alphabet in the spelling of turtle also encapsulates some of the core values of integrity. Now, in the National Integrity Plan, as encapsulated in the turtle model, there are 8 institutions: the family, community, civil society, social culture, which includes education, culture, media, etc., religion, economy, politics, and administration. Now, let us look at this. Now, if we look at this model, I mean, very simple drawing here. You can see the propeller of the turtle, the one below. There are 2 things there, agama dan social budaya. But in the middle is in keluarga, family, community, and then masyarakat civil society. That is the basic units in the society. The individual and the family is the smallest basic unit, and then we can have a larger unit for the community, and then we have got the various representative organizations of the society, which are called masyarakat civil or the NGOs. But what guides them? What is it that guides them? It is the 2 propellers, spiritual propellers, agama. I think in one of the questions they relate to this. Questions in the chat box ask about this, about the spiritual agama. And then the social budaya, the values and the norms emphasized in our culture. So it is the spiritual values together with the values and norms of from our culture that guide the keluarga, the individual and the family, that guides the community, and that guides the masyarakat civil. And then, of course, at the top there, you have got economy, where people make a living, the economic sector, the private sector, the productivity and all that, and politics, governance, about political governance, and then you have got the administration. The administration is, of course, the what we call it, the executive, the three pillars, components of the administration: the executive, the legislative, the judiciary, and then you have got the civil service and all that. So, but the foundations are the values, the propellers that are being shown there. So, to nurture integrity, to promote integrity building, we have to tackle, of course, the individual and the family. We have got to tackle the community. We have got to tackle the civil society. We have got to infuse values from the culture in the education, propagated through the media and other ways. We have got to use the values from our religion, and then we infuse them and develop the integrity building that way, so that it can impact upon politics, it can impact upon the economic sector, and also can impact upon integration. So it's a combination from bottom up with top down. What Dato Amar mentioned just now, tone from the top. The commitment of the top leadership was integrity. That is very good. I mean, that is what the kind of message coming from the top. It is, if you look at the National Integrity Plan, factors for success, number one is leadership. Tone from the top. I think that is good. And to make it stronger, of course, it's got to be combined with bottom-up approach. To combine from the society, from the community, from the family, and those values in the religious sector, in the socio-economic sector, and all that. Okay, I think there's not much time left. I will just finish with the last one, earning trust. Integrity begets trust. With trust, our credibility is enhanced. Trust is a key element in social capital. It bonds individuals and the public together. When you start a business, you need money as capital. When serving public, we must earn their trust. With trust as social capital, we can bond with the public. We can serve and serve, provide service, and service, as Dato Amar said just now. The service repeated 3 times. Trust is absolutely crucial in a responsible public service position. Members of the public place trust and faith in the holder of that position. With trust, we get credibility and respect. Like credibility and respect, trust has to be earned. It cannot be demanded. When people's trust is betrayed, we lose our credibility. We lose people's respect. We have nothing. We have become untrustworthy in the eyes of the public. Now, I would like just to share with you which professions the public trust most, and which professions the public trust least. Where do government servants stand? I quote 2 surveys here. One Ipsos Mori survey in Britain 2020, and Ipsos Mori survey in 23 countries 2020. All right, let's see the results. What are the most and the least trusted professions in Britain? The most trusted profession is nursing, nurses, 93%, and then doctors, 91%, engineers, 89%, teachers, 85%, judges, 84%. So you can see that the nurses are the most trusted professionals in Britain. Who are the least trusted? You can see at the bottom there, below 20%. Government ministers, politicians generally, advertising executive. So politics becomes a dirty word. Politicians generally are not trusted. It's only earned 20%, less than 20%. Now, what about the other one? 23 countries survey. The results are about the same. Doctors top the list, doctors, teachers top the list, and politicians generally the bottom. Government ministers and politicians generally at the bottom. Now, this is not saying that all politicians are like that, but this is a survey done. Politicians as a group, not politicians as individuals, because some politicians as individuals have high integrity. But as a profession, as a group, they have very low, they have really very serious trust deficit amongst the public. Okay, that's a summary of the findings. Now, what about trust in professions in Malaysia? Unfortunately, there's no recent study on trust, but there was a study in 2005 by the Malaysian Institute of Public Business Ethics, which found similar results. Politicians and ministers, the least trusted, and the most trusted are doctors, engineers, and nurses, like what was found in Britain and also in the survey in the 23 countries. In his speech, that Yang Muhammad Dato Amar mentioned about perhaps about the transparency, the CPI, Corruption Perception Index. Sarawak does not have one. They only use the national, the one reported for Malaysia, CPI for Malaysia, and he was implying that a study on Sarawak CPI perhaps is useful and necessary. Perhaps if that study is done, the question about trust in professions can be included as part of the study. Okay, now how to build or reinforce trust? Walk the talk, take action. This message came as well from the speech by Yang Muhammad. Be efficient, deliver what is expected in good time. Be in good time means be fast. Be transparent and accountable. Be people friendly, overcome the red tape, have good communication skills. I think this is very important because sometimes we don't communicate very well, leading to misunderstanding. If you are late in your delivery, put yourself in the shoes of the person waiting for your service, for your decision and action. Apologize, promise to serve better next time. Always practice empathy, that is seeing from the perspective of the person who is expecting your service and act accordingly. That is integrity, a way of earning trust. So the take-home message is this: use knowledge, that means the brain that Dato Anis talked about just now, to analyze and understand problems. Use your head to understand things and to see options. But use wisdom and your heart. Your heart here means conscience, to decide between options. The essence of wisdom is to resolve or integrate divergent problems and different options arising from the complexity of human life. After weighing the options wisely, make the decision, but make sure you use your heart and your conscience when you make decisions. Remember, integrity is the habits of the heart. Solving problems with wisdom, efficiency, and with speed. Respect people's intelligence and dignity. Empathize with people's problems. This will touch the people's hearts, earn their respect and trust. That's how we build trust in our work, in the performance of our public service, in line of our duty. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation.
So thank you very much, Pak. Dah lama tak dengar your kuliah. I think we have come to the end of our webinar today. So to me, frankly, this has been a really fascinating and engaging discussion. We have very, very good presentation and sharing of information and also experiences by 3 of our eminent speakers here. And I want to thank all the panelists for their really insightful presentation and discussion. So I think we have come to the end of really the end. So before we leave, I would like to share with you this thing that I learned from my ethics professor when I was doing my master's. He always reminded us, speak with honesty, think with sincerity, and act with integrity. So with that, thank you very much. I am Madeline Berma, signing off. Have a good day, everyone. Stay safe, and thank you very much. Stay safe. Thank you.